Kiss My Chaos. Taking stories of trauma into triumph while living life in the middle and everything in between. All views are expressed solely of the host, guests, and for entertainment purposes only. You don't like it? Well, you can kiss our chaos. Here are your hosts, Abigail Dark and D.T. Hudson.
Holy cow, 2 days in a row with Abby. Oh my gosh.
Are you tired of me yet?
Nope.
No?
Nope.
I bet you are.
Nope, not at all.
Oh, okay.
Not at all. Not at all.
You will be by the end of today.
It's the rumor.
I'm sassy and I've run out of all of my supplements.
Considering the day's topic, it's best I say as little as possible.
I think you have an
maybe
opinion we want a man's perspective on their wife's crazy too. I think that's important to know.
I have to be careful with that. She listens. She said it's okay to talk about it.
Is it okay? Angie, I'll hold you back,
she said it's okay to talk about it because she's got a million questions too. And I think it should be pointed out, this has been a very requested episode. Am I wrong?
Extremely requested. I have gotten so many messages after. So I had a slight mental breakdown on the internet because, that's what you do nowadays, apparently. And I just said, I was frustrated, I went to my primary, I went to, the doctor and I was asking her, what do I do? I can't seem to lose the weight. I don't know if it's if it's hormones or if it's this or that, but I had episodes that we talked about before with the drawers. If you've listened to prior episodes, I flipped out at my whole family. That is not me. I normally have a very wonderful stress threshold and it's just deteriorated in the past 2 years. And then, and then I was told by one doctor, don't do cardio. Don't do that. That hurts your cortisol. That does this or that. And I'm like, well, kind of got to do some cardio, heart health, things like that. So then I started this triathlon training stuff and I felt good. I felt better. It didn't hurt anything. And then, so I was on there and I was saying how frustrating it was to be pushed by my primary to other places or people. She didn't even say this could be a general reason as to why, perimenopause or this or that. My phone heard me, and so then my Instagram was hey girl, this is your problem. And so going through everything, and the reason why I started my health journey was being adopted. I did not know my family history, but then when I did learn a little bit, there is an extreme amount of cancer in our family. Mm-hmm. And so the only things that I did hear or read was HRT, higher amounts of estrogen can cause cancer, can cause this and that. And so I was like, whoa, no, we don't want to do that. Mm-hmm. And you're going to correct me on all of this stuff, I'm sure.
Can we introduce our guest? Maybe
I'm on a tangent.
I know you're fired up, and I'm excited for you.
I'm tangent. Yeah, go ahead. You introduce.
No, it's your. I do the intro.
She's ready.
I'm ready. I'm fired.
She's ready, and I'm excited.
I'm excited.
Well, why don't you introduce yourself before I get on my tangent?
No problem. I'm Nichole Lind, nurse practitioner with Firefly Medical. I've been with Firefly now for just a little over a year, but I've been a provider in preventative medicine world for about 12 years. I worked for another independent clinic here in Fargo for about 11 and just recently transferred or transitioned to Firefly Medical. I have an extensive background in insulin resistance, weight loss, and prevention of diabetes, heart disease, all the things that we don't want to get as we grow older in life. And the questions, things that you were just bringing up in what you've been experiencing and what you've went through with your primary doctor is what I see all day, every day. Frustrated men and women who come because their doctors aren't listening. They don't know what to say to you. They don't know how to treat you. And then, like you said, all of your internet searches out there tell you that you're going to do something wrong by doing hormones. And so I started on the, Dan and I were talking as he was getting set up here. Like I said, worked with this other clinic for 11 years, helping people lose weight. I was a product of their weight loss program myself. After I got out of nurse practitioner school, I had probably about 10 pounds to lose before I went to NP school. And then coming out, I had an additional 15. So I had about 25 pounds that I needed to lose. And in my years past, tried to lose that weight with diet, exercise, eating as few calories as you could possibly manage, and work out all the time. And I would maybe shuck 1 or 2 pounds. And, it's just defeated and low motivation. You don't feel good about yourself. And then a colleague of mine that I went to NP school with, she's like, hey, I now work for this clinic. It's a whole different ball of wax when it comes to losing weight and understanding diet. I think you'd really like it. And so went there as a patient and lost, I think I started out at 159. And, I know out there in the world, you're probably like, well, 159, that's not a big deal. I'm only 5 feet tall. And so 159 is a big deal when you're only 5 feet tall, and my knees hurt. I was tired all the time, wanted to nap all the time, never felt good. And so I got down, I think my lowest weight was 123 on the program. Had lost a little bit of muscle mass, worked hard on lifting and my protein, and got myself back up to around 128. And that's where I kind of feel my most comfortable. And I've lived at that weight. Of course, just like everybody, fluctuate up and down depending on what's going on in life. But I've lived at that weight now for 10 years. So when people say that you can't make low carb, keto, carnivore, or that way of life permanent, I stand to disagree with that.
Living proof of it.
I'm living proof of it. We were doing some promotional work for that clinic, and they had my before and after pictures up on one of the TV commercials they had. And the TV producer actually said, are you sure you gave me the right picture? This doesn't look like the same girl. And of course I did transition from brown hair to blonde hair, but sure. my body had gone through quite the transformation, and it was me. And I still have the picture. Every once in a while I'll break it out to show people. But so lots of extensive history or experience with diet and nutrition, helping people along their weight loss journeys. But then I started to notice age 35 to 55, weight loss would stop for them. No matter how well they did, they would get stuck. If they follow the diet plan on T, if they were taking their insulin sensitizing medications consistently, doing the exercise, but weight just came to a halt for them. I'm like, there's got to be something more. There's got to be something hormonal that is involved here with this. I started to move into my 40s. I started to really notice changes about age 39 into 40. And then 41, 42, my menstrual cycles started to change, like saturating my clothes. Never had heavy, horrible periods. Was somebody that was cramping a lot or moody, but all of a sudden that stuff was really starting to change for me. And I'm like, why? Why is this happening? And started to look for hormone education programs to attend, because unfortunately, we aren't taught hormones in school. As a nurse practitioner, as a physician's assistant, or as an MD, it is not part of our general education. The most we learn, or the most I learned about hormones in school, was birth control. That's all I was taught, was birth control. Nothing perimenopause, nothing postmenopause. And if my medical director, Dr. Nichole Jackson-Lind, was here, she would tell you too that it was not a part of her graduate, postgraduate education as well. So I sought out education and came across WorldLink Medical, and I gave you guys Dr. Neil Rousier's book tonight, Normal Isn't Optimal. He is the leader of WorldLink Medical, and all of our information and how we treat patients is his protocol that he's learned trial and error throughout the years and through evidence-based medicine. And when he teaches us about hormones, he gives us everything there is that why it might be wrong and what is right. So we get both sides of the evidence medicine. This was reported a certain way. but that's not quite accurate because they used this term instead of this term. And so when you're looking through the internet will grab things and they'll be like, oh, right there, that's bad. That's because they were that. Well, they were saying progestin, but they were actually talking about progesterone. And that's two different things. And so, and if you're not in the medical world, or if you're not somebody who is critical of literature, how are you supposed to know what is right and what is wrong and that kind of thing? And so when we're taught both sides of the evidence, how something can be interpreted one way versus what it actually is. So I mean, over a couple of thousand articles are presented in our 4 sessions of education. And I know Dr. Levitt probably has over a couple of 100 hours of bioidentical hormone replacement training. I'm probably around 100 or more so hours of bioidentical hormone replacement therapy. The average doctor maybe gets 3 hours. So when you go to the doctor and you ask them, why do I not feel good? They're banking on their 3 hours of education that they got.
And that's where you brought up, here's your antidepressants. Here's your this, here's
anxiety
your that.
meds.
Yes.
Anxiety. And
Here's a sleeping pill.
it's like you're chasing something you'll never catch.
Right. And where it boils down to is as hormones exit our body. So let's start with perimenopause. Perimenopause starts around age 35. So if you are 35 and you go to your doctor and you're like, I'm feeling this way, this way, this way, and they tell you you're too young to be going into that phase of life, no, that's usually about the time of life that it starts, is about age 35. And perimenopause can last as long as 55. I even have a 58-year-old who is still in perimenopause and has not moved into the full menopausal transition yet. But it can start that early. And what it is the hormone inhibin is starting to make its exit. Inhibin is the traffic cop of the ovary and controls the amount of estradiol that is produced by the ovary. So as inhibin goes away, our body starts to free flow estradiol, and your levels can get really, really high, sometimes even up into pregnancy ranges of estradiol. Well, that makes you, quote unquote, feel crazy, or you start to have really heavy menstrual periods. Your periods get really heavy and you're bleeding a lot. That's what I was experiencing, was soaking through my clothes. I had to bring separate pants with me to work because I was concerned that I was going to soak through my clothes, and you'd have this horrific cramping or pain, or your moods could feel like you were just on a roller coaster. And that's because estradiol is largely unopposed, because as inhibin goes away, progesterone, its balancing hormone, also is on the decline. And it's progesterone that manages the uterus, or the endometrial lining of the uterus. And so when progesterone levels are higher, you're going to have a better mood. You're going to feel more calm. You're going to be more rational. You're going to sleep better. And when at optimal levels, which on blood panel is usually greater than 10, you're also then protected against dementia, breast cancer, uterine, and ovarian cancer. So progesterone is the female hormone. Both men and women make testosterone and estradiol, but it's progesterone that makes you feel like a woman, and a good woman at that, and not crazy.
Right.
So you always want more progesterone, but as part of perimenopause, that declines, your testosterone declines. Now you don't want to have sex. Now you're crabby all the time. Now you're tired all the time, and you've got these elevated estradiol levels, and life is just miserable. And we can't figure out why we're putting on this body weight, because as the hormones are transitioning, you're becoming more insulin resistant, and it's that insulin resistance factor that then contributes to that belly weight. It contributes to inflammation. So that's why your joints start to hurt, and that's why you have more headaches, and you're fatigued more often. And so it's a balance of hormones and diet that bring everything together so that you can survive your 40s and 50s feeling like a normal, rational person, and not somebody who wants to rip their cupboard doors off or hate their husband.
Hate their husband. I was going to say it, not hate.
Yep.
Did anyone else just feel like she completely described your life? I'm like going through all these things in my head. Yeah, the week before my period is when I'm the most craziest, because my body is just like fighting to be a woman.
Right.
You're just fighting to like survive. Like before 40, like you said, I never had any of that. I didn't like feel any of those things. I didn't. And then like all of a sudden one day you just wake up and you're like, what is going on?
What's
like
wrong
I
with
don't
me?
know what's wrong with me. And then the other thing you can touch on this too is the scariness of being over 40, thinking, oh my God, I'm pregnant. I haven't had a period in 43 days. You know, you're like, what's wrong?
Why is that happening?
And
Right.
do I have an ovarian cancer? Like, what's wrong with me? But then like that 28 to like 42 day, like you're nuts through that entire cycle because like your body is not producing a cycle. And then when it finally comes, you're like, then you walk in and your husband's like, did you finally get your period? Like, oh my God, you know?
Yes.
So it's just, you get that like feeling of like, oh, I'm normal now. You know,
Right.
like it's Jekyll and Hyde.
Yes.
It really is. It's crazy
It
how
is.
that feels.
And that a lot of times deals with the follicular stimulating hormone and the luteinizing hormone being produced by the hypothalamus pituitary area of the brain. The FSH, or follicular stimulating hormone, is the hormone that is responsible to work on the ovary, to squeeze that ovary, to get those last few eggs to release for fertilization. And so, like I said, inhibin goes away, and it's a rodeo. Anything is normal in perimenopause. Nothing is surprising in perimenopause because levels are fluctuating on the day, on the hour, sometimes for some women, and that's why you feel like you're on this roller coaster, because the brain is secreting these hormones, trying to get those ovaries to release those last few eggs to become fertile, to have that last baby out there in the world. And usually the result, then women go to their doctor, they're like, help, I feel crazy. I don't know why I feel this way. My periods are heavy. I'm so crampy all the time. And their answer is, here's some birth control. Because birth control shuts off your ovaries. It reduces your follicular stimulating hormone and your luteinizing hormone, shuts them off, locks them down so that you no longer have that function. They replace the hormones with the birth control. So whatever the synthetic form of estradiol and the synthetic form of it's progestin. Let's make sure we're not confusing the two. It's progestin. It fills the receptor sites in your body for estradiol and progesterone. And so in their minds that you've replaced the hormone because you have the birth control on board. But actually what those do is they just block those hormone receptors, which then doesn't allow your body to take up your natural hormones, the very little that is being produced, because again, birth control has shut everything down.
What are your thoughts on, so this is something too, now that I think about it, since you said that, I went off birth control when I was like turning 40. My husband got snipped, you know, yay. You know,
Good job, Andy.
yeah. Sorry, Andy, you're being put out there. But it's, you know, it's normal for
it's
men
normal.
of that age to like have that sort of thing happen. And it makes sense now, like after I went off of that is when a lot of this started and like and talking to some of my friends who like, or maybe a year younger than me, you know, she had said, oh yeah, I don't have any problems, but she was still on birth control.
Right.
And so, you know, like how long can you honestly prolong that? And is it healthy for a woman to be doing that? I mean, is it causing more cancer issues and things the longer they're on birth control over 40? Because your body, it's not natural to have that.
Birth control in general, as a teen, a 20-year-old, 30-year-old, 40-year-old, is a big fat no.
True.
Because it shuts off your ovarian function. You put yourself into a mini menopause. So if you have a teenager, age 18 for an example, horrible periods or something like that, and you're like, let's try some birth control to make everything better, you're putting your 18-year-old daughter into a pseudomenopause. Progestin then potentiates weight gain or insulin resistance. And so young ladies, if you start to put on weight, that's Dr. Lovett's story. And I can say this story because she's done a podcast herself about birth control. She has a history of severe endometriosis and polycystic ovarian syndrome. And around, I think, age 18, cycles and stuff were miserable for her. She went on birth control, and a year later, she was up 75 pounds. No changes to her food, no changes to her exercise, had just gained 75 pounds for no particular reason. Goes into her doctor, says, I don't feel good. I put on all of this weight. And he's like, I don't know. I guess you must be eating too much. And that's where he left off on it. And she already knew she was going to be a doctor, and that was going to be a major emphasis in her line of career study to become a doctor. But birth control it makes you insulin resistant. It shuts off your natural hormones, so it sets you up to be at higher risk for breast cancer or any type of female cancers, because estradiol, progesterone, and testosterone, all three are preventative against cancers when their levels are in an optimal range. I'm not going to say normal,
Right.
because normal isn't optimal, especially where they use the reference ranges for a lot of hormone ranges. Those are the average of thousands of sick old people. So who is the most sick and who's entering our medical system most frequently? Older people who have a lot of illness. And so the reference ranges are the average of all of those results from those older people. So why are we comparing my labs at age 46 to somebody who's 86? Doesn't make sense, right? Their hormone levels are going to be zero. Why? Because an 86-year-old woman doesn't menstruate anymore. Her ovaries are done. They're finished. So it makes no sense to compare my levels, who is somebody in perimenopause, to somebody who's post-menopause. And so that's where we get into a lot of problems, is insurance likes to treat based off of reference ranges or lab values.
Sure.
We choose to treat based off of symptoms and symptomology. We draw labs to point ourselves in the direction of maybe what you're experiencing, looking to find why you're experiencing what you're finding. But we start the medication based off of your symptoms, and we titrate the medication up until your symptoms are gone, as long as you're not having side effects.
Sure. I have a little segue into this. So can you elaborate a little bit? How you were talking about you compare a 46-year-old to an 86-year-old. That doesn't make any sense to me. How about some of these women that are post-hysterectomy?
Correct. There depends on the kind of hysterectomy. If they've had a partial hysterectomy, that means that their ovaries have been maintained and only the uterus or sometimes the fallopian tubes have been taken. That's going to be different from a complete hysterectomy where all organs have been removed. All organs removed is called surgical menopause. Everything is taken out. There's going to be no hormones made. And unless it's replaced via bioidentical hormone replacement therapy, they're just going to exist without hormones the rest of their life, which then sets them up for breast cancer, dementia, weight gain, diabetes, osteoporosis, fatty liver, cancers, all the things that we think about our grandparents developing. The earlier a woman goes into surgical menopause or menopause, the higher risk she is for developing those disease processes unless the hormones are replaced.
So this is fascinating to me because Dr. Google will tell you almost the opposite. It's
Right.
like, well, the hormone therapy, that's what's going to cause this. And
Right. No, it's the insulin resistance and inflammation that causes the cancers. The potentiating factor is always insulin resistance. You make visceral body weight or body fat centrally in the middle section of your body. And it produces around 80 to 100 different chemicals, only 2 of which is what we use for good, and the rest can make us feel crappy. Well, some of that chemical is toxic estrogens, and that's what is then taken up at the breast receptor, is the toxic estrogens and not the estradiol. And so a lot of times when they say it's an estrogen positive cancer, they're speaking of that toxic estrogen and not from the estradiol. Because if you think about it, women in their 20s and 30s, who develops breast cancer? Most women postmenopausal, right? Sometimes even in perimenopause. We don't have teenagers, 20-year-olds or 30-year-olds developing breast cancer when their estrogen, progesterone, and testosterone levels are at the highest, right? So if it was a hormone problem, wouldn't we have breast cancer in our teens, 20s, and 30s?
it's fascinating.
But we don't. It happens after hormones have left the building. They've been Elvis, they left the building. That's when we develop more of those concerns. And that's because we have become insulin resistant, because hormones, estradiol, testosterone, help to reduce insulin resistance and make you more insulin sensitive so that you don't put on this visceral body fat that contributes to that toxic form of estrogen.
And I definitely think, too, the American diet has contributed to
100%.
breast cancer coming earlier and earlier because of the inflammation factor. I've heard that many, many times where people are inflamed from their diets. They just they think, oh, I'm eating this or that, but like the nutrients that is provided in our food is less and less, even on a healthier diet.
Right.
You know, if you're eating more fruits and vegetables, well, you're still consuming chemicals. You're still, you know, and things that you don't even realize are on your food. You know, your edible wax on your apples, or the things that you would normally think wouldn't affect you, or that, oh, I eat healthy, or I do this or that. There is, I mean, maybe you can speak to this. I know for women like over the age of 35, is there an optimal diet that they should be following?
Low carb, keto, carnivore. That's because that's the one that's going to keep your insulin level to the lowest. Now, what is the definition of a low carb diet? Low carb is 100 grams of net carb or less. Keto is 50 gram net carbs or less. Ketosis, where you are just a pure fat burner, is 25 grams of net carb or less. So you don't have to be super rigid with yourself in order to manage your insulin levels. I prototypically prescribe my patients 75 grams of net carb a day. Obviously, I want those carbs to come in the form of fruits, vegetables, whole foods, not from, I'm going to try to budget my bag of potato chips into my 75 grams of carbohydrate. I'm going to try to budget my cookie in every day. Those are a treat. Those are something that we have every once in a blue moon, but not something that we should be trying to sustain ourselves off of. So 75 grams of net carb a day. We want adequate protein. And so in order to maintain muscle mass, because your muscle is your metabolism, the more muscle cells you have, the more cells there are to use glucose to lower your insulin level so that you can access and burn body fat. If insulin is elevated, you're not going to burn fat. You're going to burn glucose because it's demanding to be burned and used preferentially. And so in order to get glucose down, we have to eat less of the foods that contribute to glucose, and that is carbs. So let's define carbs. Carbs are anything that never walked, crawled, swam, or flew at any time in its life. It's white. It's in the form of bread, pasta, rice, chips, crackers, sweets, any type of baked good. Fruits and vegetables are also in that carbohydrate category. Now, if you're going to have carbs, again, that's where I direct people. But even so, depending on your level of insulin resistance, you can have severe blood glucose reactions by eating an apple. And a lot of people don't realize that. They think, oh, I'm eating a fruit, so I'm being healthy today. But if you're severely insulin resistant, you can have the same kind of blood sugar reaction as if you ate a Snickers bar just by eating that apple. And that's not what's going to be beneficial. I have a patient right now who's using a CGM, a continuous glucose monitor. She's been stuck. We're got her hormonally optimized on thyroid, estrogen, progesterone, testosterone, and it's just not moving for her. She's tried the GLP ones. She had bad side effects from it and doesn't want to go that route again. Great. I'm like, let's try a continuous glucose monitor. She comes to her appointment and she's like, Nichole, holy crap, my mind is blown. I had no freaking clue that my body was reacting to a lot of my foods that I was eating. I thought they were good for me. And she was stuck high for like a day. She went to Buffalo Wild Wings and had the original buffalo wings with a lemon pepper rub on it. And the biggest offender, she had some chips with salsa. And her blood sugar stayed above 120 for 2 days.
I believe it. Mm-hmm. The other thing, so another question I guess you could ask now is that carb intake, is that for people who are like minimally active, regularly active? Do you adjust that according to?
Nope. 75 across the board.
Interesting.
75 across the board.
I think I would die doing a triathlon not having carbs.
You know, for somebody like yourself trying to do a triathlon, so my husband is a 7-time All-American swimmer, collegiate swimmer.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
He's stayed active his whole entire life. When he was a senior in high school, he was Minnesota Swimmer of the Year. So, and he has stayed very active most of his life. And when he was going through college and swimming at his top peaks, you know, he was told carb load, carb load, carb load. And then after he stopped swimming in college and just kind of moved into a club zone of things, he watched his weight. He ran what's the big elite marathon that you run?
Ironman?
Yep, he did an Ironman. He's done a number of marathons in general. And so he would carb load. And when we first started dating, he knew what I did for work. And he's like, our whole first date was about food. That's all he wanted to know. Basically, he had a free consult with him that night on our date, because over years, every year he'd put on 5 pounds and he just couldn't get it off. But yet he was exercising, and he just couldn't get the weight off. And he's like, what am I not doing right? And I'm like, well, what are you eating? And he's like, smoothies and peanut butter and jelly sandwiches. And he at that time was just recently divorced. So of course he was trying to cook for his kids, and his kids were kids, and so they're picky. So mac and cheese, and, and I'm like, well, you're eating a lot of carbohydrates, and that's why your weight is going up. You're becoming more and more insulin resistant. It doesn't matter how hard you work out. You're still using sugar as fuel. And what you need to tap into is body fat. And the only way that you're going to tap into your endless amount of energy is by getting your glucose level down. You will survive a triathlon just fine when you are keto adapted. You have to adapt first before you do the triathlon. I recommend adapting at least 5 to 6 months before the event so that you don't hit that wall. Do not carb load before your event if you're keto adapted, because you're going to only use the carbs that are out there for that 1%. And once that 1% is gone and used up, smack, that's when you hit the wall and you have no energy and you can't go anymore. I ran a half marathon. My friend and I, we never used goo packets. Her and I both ate the low carb diet that we were teaching our patients at the time. Never used the goo packets, never stopped for orange slices, and we had plenty of energy. But we had been carb adapted or keto adapted for probably a couple of years before we had ran that race. And so you can do it. There's Finney and Volek. If you like to learn about how can I do ultra marathons, marathoning, ultra activities, exercise in general, and do it in a keto adapted way, the author's name are Finney, Phinney, and Volek, Volek. They both do experiments on ultra athletes using ketosis or ketogenic diets and how they outperform people who follow a standard diet.
Okay. Yeah, I know we're having our triathlon party coming up here pretty soon, so it'd be interesting to pick some of their brains on like.
Is it at Buffalo Wild Wings? Because
it is not. We're all bringing food, and I think a lot of them are remotely health conscious. I would imagine.
I would imagine
for the community, but. It's interesting and like I would say scary for a lot of people to maybe hear that, like especially marathon runners and people that do that. I was told to carb load, but actually I had spaghetti like 2 days before that and I felt like shit. Right. So then I stopped eating it. Yeah.
You only use, you use 10% for immediate fuel. 1% is stored away as glycogen into the muscle cells in the liver for use in case of an emergency. And then the other 80% or whatever is left over is stored away as body fat. So if you eat that spaghetti the night before or 2 days before, all of that energy is been stored away as fat. And unless you're keto adapted, you can't access that fat during the race. You're just going to run off of those carbs that you took in that 24 hours before. And so there's no point. You got to keto adapt to have endless energy because we have at least weeks of stored body fat on our body, right? So you could run that marathon for as long as you wanted to go, as long as you're keto adapted first.
And I had to take a long time to like figure out. So like I've been on this like micro path of like figuring out the weight loss thing. I mean, I've lost 60 pounds in a couple years.
You just ran your triathlon. That was great.
I did. Yeah, it was great. It was awesome. And I learned a lot of things, but like starting out, I thought, oh, well, if I switch my white bread to Dave's Killer Bread, so I switched that over, so then I found out peanut butter is not a protein, it's a fat. So then I switched, a lot of that kind of stuff. So like, it was like these little switches that I made. Still a fruit addict. Can't help that. As of right now.
That's not a bad thing. You're not eating cookies and cake and ice cream and the things that have no nutritive value to it,
I quit alcohol. So like occasionally I'm like, yeah, okay, cake. But you have to live, like you have to pick your battles in life too. Like I don't think you're telling everyone like, you're never going to eat that again. Like that would be an eating disorder, obviously.
Right. You're a human being. You're a human being and I never expect perfection of anybody, kind of thing. I am certainly not perfect in my way that I eat. Like I said, I've flexed up and down. I got back up to a heavier weight again of around 147 when I owned my own meal prep business. Not because my food that I was cooking was making me gain weight. It was all of the stress. And it was during that perimenopausal time frame before I learned about hormones and the stress response that I was going through that was contributing to the weight gain. And of course, we closed our business and got my stress levels back under control, and the weight came right back off again. So
what do you say to people? Okay, so in the fitness community, they're going to say calories in, calories out, right? So they're gonna beat you over the head on that, and I'm sure people will probably comment on this with us because they stress that so much. It's like does your body recognize the calories from this or that, or is it just calories in versus calories out?
You're not a physics equation.
Yeah,
it's not that simple.
Sure.
And they need to get over themselves and look at actual science. The whole calories in, calorie out doesn't work. Dr. Jason Fung, he is a guy who is a nephrologist actually out of Canada and wrote the obesity code. He has a number of different books, but the obesity code is a good place to start. And he talks about fasting for the he was treating diabetes with fasting because diabetes and high blood pressure are the number 1, number 2 reasons for kidney disease and kidney failure, which would require patients to use dialysis. And so he found out that, well, man, if I control insulin levels and blood glucose gets improved, kidney numbers come up, their function improves. If I lower their insulin levels, their blood pressure comes down because blood pressure is a problem of insulin and insulin resistance and not because of salt, like everybody wants to believe it is. Their blood pressure got better. Their kidney function got better. And so Dr. Jason Fung, you can Google him. He's on YouTube. He's got his own podcast. He's got books out there that totally dispels that calories in, calories out equation. Dr. Ben Bickman is a PhD out of Brigham Young. He is not a medical doctor, but he studies and does research specifically on insulin resistance. And he, too, has a number of YouTube videos out there, podcasts that he's been on that talks about calories in, calories out. If that were true, you could eat 1,000 calories of M&Ms, right? Mm-hmm. And then there's 1,000 calories of steak. I'm going to put my money that you're going to lose the weight on the 1,000 calories of steak and not from the M&M diet. Why?
Right.
Because M&Ms cause your blood glucose to rise. Insulin goes up. We use 10%, store 1%, use for backup emergency, and then the other 89% is fat. Steak doesn't do that to you. It does not cause an insulin response. It is a protein. Protein causes a very minuscule blip in the insulin response world of things. But it does not cause weight gain. So eat all the red meat you want, eat all the eggs you want. Anything that did walk, crawl, swim, or flew at any point in time in its life is a protein and probably has some healthy fat with it. It does not cause a rise in insulin. So if you get your insulin down, your diabetes, your blood pressure, your inflammation, your headaches, the way you feel, your energy levels will get much better when you get that down.
So let's talk men.
Yeah, let's talk men. Wait, can I say something first?
Yeah.
This is interesting to me because when I first started in law enforcement, it was shift work, and energy.
It's crappy.
Yeah, it's crappy, and it was a stressful job. Clearly, military or law enforcement, firefighter, anything like that. Diet is I was horrible. With it, and so being younger, I'm like, I'm just going to go run it off. Never worked. Never worked. And this is starting to
make sense now.
100% makes sense.
Yeah. Your diet plays a big role. And unfortunately in military, law enforcement, nursing, anything that works as shift work, we're not meant to be awake at night and working during the nighttime. And so you're throwing off your circadian rhythm for sleep. And we end up being sleep deprived most of the time, your cortisol level goes up. Cortisol is the known stress hormone, and when stress hormone goes up, its best friend is, guess what? Insulin. Insulin goes up. It's that fight or flight response situation. It's like, I have to keep Dan alive. something is going on. He's wide awake at night. I don't know what's going on, but he's running around. He must be foraging for food. So I have to keep him alive, and you store away more body fat as a result. I'm not telling people to quit your job if that's the kind of line of work that you're doing, but it's important to make sure that you do get 7 to 8 hours of sleep, that you have some way of dealing with your daily rigors to get those cortisol levels better under control so that insulin isn't a factor. Insulin, there's the chicken and the egg thing too, when you're bridging into gentlemen's health. Low testosterone, what comes first? Is it the fact that your testes are starting to fail and that's why your testosterone levels are low? Or is it the insulin resistance that's pushing your testosterone low? I have a patient who came to me, wasn't sure which route he wanted to go. I offer both weight loss and hormone route. Most of my people end up going the hormone route because it's all encompassing. But I do have a patient who I just want to see how my testosterone level rebounds after I lose X amount of weight. Sure, let's do that. Let's focus on food and nutrition and make some changes. Did the good work, down about 50 pounds, doing great. We redrew his blood levels, redrew his testosterone level. It rebounded about 200 points. That's it. He was still super low. And so it's then a matter of, okay, now are you still interested in replacing, or are you just still wanting to go with the diet? And so when there's those folks out there that believe everything can be done with diet and supplementation, at a certain point in life, your testes, your ovaries are going to decline and they're not going to work as well. Nothing is going to replace that unless you replace the hormone. And then it's important that you're replacing with bioidentical hormones. So what is the difference between synthetic and bioidentical? Bioidentical hormones are made from plants that are identical to what you make naturally. So when you ingest the testosterone or apply the testosterone or the estradiol or progesterone, your body looks at it as, oh, this is Abby. She made this. I'm going to use it and metabolize it just as if it came from your own ovary. So the side effect profile goes down tremendously. So when you read stuff on the internet about hormones and how dangerous they are, that is being misconstrued with synthetic hormones. Hormones made in a lab to mimic estradiol, to mimic progesterone. They're not the same thing, and that's where all of the side effects come from. And that's where all of the misinformation comes from, that those hormones cause cancer. Even synthetic estradiol has kind of been shown that, oh, it's not the problem. It's actually the synthetic progestin. And that's on birth control. Every form of birth control has synthetic progestin.
People like us do not understand that.
Yeah, that was going to be my question. It's like you just described that earlier as birth control.
Yeah, and everybody is happy to take that without understanding the consequences that it leads to insulin resistance, increased risk of diabetes, increased risk of heart disease, increased risk of cancer. How do I protect myself from becoming pregnant? Use a condom. Abstinence. There's other things that you can do to be intimate if you want to avoid a baby at that point in time in your life.
Right. Mm-hmm. But in our normal American life, that's work. Like, we don't want to do that. Mm-hmm. I guess the other piece that I was curious about is, so a lot of women like myself and other people, and this is something that I have learned, that the supplements that you're buying in a grocery store are garbage.
Right.
Throw them in the garbage because they're not regulated.
Right.
That whole industry is not regulated, which is crazy. But
you want to get medical grade. Not all our supplement line that we use is from Orthomolecular.
Okay.
And we're currently developing our own supplement line through a medical grade provider. Dr. Lovett is a pharmacologist.
Oh,
so
nice.
she is both an MD, but she has a PhD as a pharmacologist, not a pharmacist. A pharmacist dispenses medications and understands the dosings. She understands the drugs at their baby level, where they're developed, how they're going to impact the body, what they're going to do for the body, the side effects that are going to come from them. So the research side of that. And so she's currently in the line or developing her own line of supplements that are beneficial. But right currently until that line is ready, we use orthomolecular pot products, and we get great blood levels. People who start those supplements even before their hormones show up from the pharmacy can tell an improvement in their energy levels and how they feel. And it just goes to show how deficient we are in supplements or in micronutrients because our food is shit.
And it's funny because I came prepared. Remember when I told you I was running out of my supplements?
She's digging in her bag, everybody.
I'm digging in my bag. So I brought my pharmacy.
Okay.
So I was like, you know what? I want her to see these things because, like, I would imagine all of us are like, you know, and this was recommended to me from someone whom I love dearly. She's amazing. And I was told these products were, like, great. And you know what? I felt different. I felt better. I had done, you know, just a simple Dutch test kind of thing, you know, like not medical grade or whatever. But this is I take this every day.
Okay.
Every single morning. This, like, there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, including my creatine and my
Great. I love creatine.
collagen, you know, that I take every single morning.
Both are great.
And so then I take all of these. And now, like, you'll notice some of these are empty because I've run out.
Sure.
But, like, my stress B complex, you know, I feel, I don't know if it's a placebo or whatever, but, like, I can tell when I don't take those because I feel edgier. I feel cranky. I feel just like,
So what do B vitamins do for you? B vitamins are the energy vitamins. When you eat food, the food is broken out into nutrients. It's the B vitamins that grab those nutrients and pull them into the cells, to the mitochondria, the powerhouses of the cells that make us go and make us function and work. And so when you don't have adequate B levels, we recommend a B12 level of 1,000 or higher. B vitamins are water soluble. You can't overdose on them. Whatever you don't use, your body will urinate out. So there's no harm in taking additional B vitamins. So if you go to a doctor and they draw your B level and it's greater than 1,000 and they start to panic, tell them they're wrong. It's okay because there's no such thing as too much B12. You're going to have great energy, great hair, skin, and nails. It improves insulin sensitivity. B vitamins grab glucose, pull them into the cell, to the mitochondria to create power and energy and make you go. It also helps to lower an amino acid called homocysteine. That amino acid is generated naturally within our body. And if homocysteine levels are elevated, you're at an increased risk for cardiovascular disease. And so when your B12 level and your folate level, methylfolate in particular, is greater than 20, less risk of cardiovascular disease, better insulin sensitivity from that supplement. So you feel poorer, most likely, because you have less B vitamin grabbing onto that glucose, pulling it into the cell. It's staying in your bloodstream. Glucose in the bloodstream is toxic to us, and that's why we feel crappy, we feel tired, inflammation is increased then as a result. B vitamins are great.
What was it? So I don't know how accurate the Dutch tests are, whatever.
They're not.
They're probably not. But, like, the readings on it, my testosterone, my estrogen, everything was like a 1. Yeah. And they were saying, like, optimal was 20.
Yeah.
And I'm like, ooh.
The problem with the Dutch test, so I'm familiar with the Dutch test because where I worked previously, we were experimenting with that when I was thinking of let's do some hormones. And so we were dabbling around with Dutch testing. The biggest thing about Dutch testing is that the progesterone level does not correlate with blood levels of progesterone. So a lot of Dutch tests also are saliva. And so you can get really high levels of progesterone through the saliva, but it's not the same. It isn't the same on your organs. So a 10 on blood testing could be like a 2 on Dutch testing or something like that. Or if they test the saliva and it comes back within their normal range, they're like, oh, you're good. But you're really not, because that's not the effect that
we did the
uterus
urine
is
one.
having.
So as far as like, maybe they're kind of the same or not the
right.
same. I
They're
don't know.
not the same. Yeah,
Right.
it's not the same. And you never want to take a topical progesterone. You always want to use an oral progesterone. Topical, you can't absorb enough in order to be protective of the brain, the breast, the ovaries, and the uterus. There was a doctor out in California, I don't know, about 10 years ago, who was treating women with oral estradiol, which is great. That's great. But he was using topical progesterone. And those women didn't have high enough progesterone levels to balance out the effects of the oral estradiol, and they developed endometrial cancer. and they sued the doctor, and he's no longer in business because he wasn't giving the appropriate route of progesterone. In order to be protective of the brain, the breast, the ovaries, and the uterus, it has to be oral progesterone.
Okay. So that's probably why people link the hormones to cancer, so they think, oh, that's
Right.
immediately like, oh, I don't want to do that.
They're either being underdosed or they're not given the right amount. A lot of times, general medicine does not prescribe progesterone because you're done having children. You don't need progesterone. It's the pregnancy hormone. It is true. It makes the uterine environment optimal for that egg to latch on, for that baby to develop. That's true. But it's your female hormone that you need all the time that helps balance out the craziness, that protects you against breast cancer, ovarian and uterine cancer. There's a disease process or a syndrome called polycystic ovarian syndrome that when I was in NP school about 13 years ago, we're taught that around 20 to 25% of the female population experiences. In my experience, I would tell you it's much higher than that. It's probably 55 to 65% of the female population have some form of polycystic ovarian syndrome. And it's not always, it needs to be renamed because it's not a matter of you having the chain of pearls in the ovary where unreleased follicles are sitting. It's not the bearded lady syndrome where, yes, that can be a factor for some women where they have horrible acne and male pattern hair growth and they tend to put all their weight on through their middle section, that kind of thing. That's not all women. It's a syndrome for a reason. There's multifacets to it. And really what it is insulin resistance at the level of the ovary and the liver. And those women typically struggle managing their weight most of their life. There is sometimes infertility issues. There is sometimes menstrual cycle issues. And a lot of why it's a syndrome is because typically every single woman with PCOS lacks progesterone. They never made enough. That's why they had difficulty maybe maintaining their pregnancies when they did get pregnant. Or they weren't able to get pregnant because there wasn't enough progesterone to make that egg stick. They are either resistant to the progesterone they make or they didn't make enough. And there's usually thyroid dysfunction that goes along with PCOS, and that's another facet of insulin resistance and the body weight gain that comes with it. And those women, because of the insulin resistance, are at a higher risk for breast cancer, ovarian and uterine cancers, diabetes, and heart disease. And so it's important to know that you have PCOS for years to come, and it stays even into your postmenopausal years. If you were PCOS as a young lady, you're going to be PCOS as a postmenstrual person, and you're probably going to go through worse menopausal symptoms because of the fact that you've never made enough progesterone your whole entire life.
So now I'm sure in your practice, you cater your supplementation along with your BHRT with people. I would imagine that this is all
This all
part
looks
of it.
great, yeah.
If you had to tell the listeners out there, the general population, men and women, what are a couple supplements you think that everyone should be doing?
Magnesium glycinate at night, or anywhere from 250 to 500 milligrams. Magnesium is like B vitamins. Every cellular reaction requires magnesium to make its cellular reactions. We have to remember that we're just a big blob of walking cells. That's all we are. And we forget that we're just this big walking science project. But if you remember from 8th grade science and you watch stuff be moving in and out of cells, that's what's happening to every single cell in your body. And it requires certain micronutrients to make those reactions happen. B vitamins, magnesium, vitamin D, and you have a great dose of vitamin D at 10,000 international units. You should take 10,000 international units of vitamin D every day. It's not a vitamin. It's a prohormone. It's a hormone. We do make it through a reaction of the sun through our skin, but where we live here in the Great White North, even in our summer months, we're too far north of the equator to make adequate vitamin D even in our summer months. And so you should supplement it year round. You need vitamin D and magnesium. You need the magnesium to activate the vitamin D into its useful source. So you need to take them both. Vitamin D protects us against, of course, immunity. It supports our immunity. It supports our skeletal health so that we don't break our bones, supports our neurological health, but it improves insulin sensitivity. Why? Because it helps you make your estrogen, testosterone, and progesterone and thyroid. So you need those adequate levels up there. And then it protects women against breast cancer and colon cancer, men against colon cancer and prostate cancer. So you want your level in that 80 to 100 range most often. So good on your vitamin D. Fish oil, great for inflammation purposes. Ashwagandha can be certainly used when it comes to mood, to help you sleep sometimes, bring down those cortisol levels. But man, just take some progesterone.
Right? I know.
Yeah.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
So I've been on my husband because in his family there's a history of depression. And so I keep telling him like vitamin D and then take the magnesium at night. He's got some inflammation things, so like the fish oil, but like my dad went and bought fish oil from like say Costco, and I'm like, no, like I've heard so many bad things. It's just there's so much extra things put into it, and like most of the active ingredients that would be good in a fish oil is no longer even exists.
It's not even there. It's probably been about 15 to 20 years now. Some company went into Walmart and picked off all of the most typically purchased vitamins and supplements off their counters or off their shelves and tested them to see how much of the active ingredient that was supposedly in that bottle in those supplements. And the vast majority of them did not have enough of that active ingredient, or they found that there was actual pharmaceutical grade prescription medications in them to get the same the outcome that they were hoping. Wow. So they were thinking they were taking a stress vitamin, but there was something else that maybe, I don't know if I have no idea. So don't quote me on this, but maybe there was a low grade amount of antidepressant in there. And that's the reason why people felt better, so
that would be synthetic.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. So who knows? I'm not saying that that's what was in it, but they found that the vast majority of those products weren't what were advertised a lot of times. So you do want to make sure that you find pharmaceutical grade line. You want to make sure that it says third party tested on it, and that it's made in the United States. That's also a big a big factor on things, because we can't always control what other countries consider as safe practices.
That makes a lot of sense. Yeah.
Yep.
You touched on this a little bit. Can you go through someone who may be a little bit apprehensive about moving forward on a path like this with, say, a family history of cancer?
Sure. Yeah, we were talking about that while we were waiting for Abby. Genetics play a very small role, anywhere between 1% to 5% in disease processes. We have patients who are BRCA gene positive. We still treat them with hormones. We have men who are post-prostate cancer or active prostate cancer. We have women who are just recently found out about cancer or post-treatment for breast cancer. Your genetics are just a very small amount. Most of today's disease processes, heart disease, diabetes, cancers, are lifestyle driven. Eating habits run in families. It's not the genetics. It's the eating habits. So if you were brought up on a junk food diet your whole life, what are you going to continue to eat? And what are you going to provide your children? The same junk food habits. And so it's a lifestyle problem and not a genicity problem. It is a small component in some disease processes, but it's blown out of proportion as to how much of a role that it actually plays.
I think that's very good for people to hear, because, again, Dr. Google's out there and it's not accurate.
Right.
It's not accurate.
And that's why a lot of people come to us, is because they've gone to their regular doctors, they feel poorly, they get the same reactions, take this medication, have birth control, here's an antidepressant, here's anxiety medicine, oh, you can't sleep, here's sleep medications. All they're doing is suppressing the symptoms. It's not treating the symptoms, because they're not getting to the root cause of those symptoms. Why am I experiencing what I'm experiencing? That's what you need to ask yourself, is why is this happening? Oh, I'm 40 years old. My inhibin has walked out the door. My progesterone level has dropped off. My testosterone has dropped off. Now I'm more insulin resistant. That's why I'm gaining weight. That's why my joints hurt. That's why I can't sleep. It's you have to work the problem backwards, if you will. You can take trazodone to go to sleep, but it's not fixing the sleep problem. The sleep problem is because you probably don't have any progesterone anymore. And when your body metabolizes progesterone, the metabolites are what make you sleep better and have better quality level of sleep. I think I touched on it earlier, you know, how much does one take? You know, well, again, that varies for the individual person. Depends on your symptoms of what you're experiencing. As long as there's no side effects, we go up on the progesterone dose, on the testosterone dose, on the estradiol dose until your symptoms are resolved. As we grow older, your receptors for those hormones grow older with you. And as a result, sometimes higher dosing is required in order to have the same desired effect that maybe you had when you were 40. You have to go up on the dose in order to have the same desired effect. No one is exempt from having hormones. There's a small percentage of people. Now, I'm not saying that everybody, I'm not going to, because I know there's a lot out there on Instagram right now that you shouldn't bully people who don't want to do hormones, that the hormones are the in trend right now. They're not a trend. We all are human beings that have testes and ovaries, and all of us do need some replacement at some point in time, but it's a choice. It's a personal choice, and we shouldn't judge people who don't want to go the hormone route, and we shouldn't judge people who do the hormone route. I personally will go to my grave with my hormones. I personally take progesterone, testosterone, and have my thyroid optimized, and I will take them until I'm dead. When I'm eligible for estradiol post-menopause, I will take that too. I have a family history of breast cancer. Doesn't scare me. I will take that too. Because it's those hormones that are going to protect me against heart disease. You know, estradiol in both men and women protect our blood vessels, the inside walls of our blood vessels, and keep plaque development down. Statins, the typically prescribed cholesterol medication, does not do that for you. It has not been studied in women until 1993. They take men's results and transpose them onto women. Women, I don't know. Last time I checked, Abby, we're not a man.
We're different, yeah, a little different.
Yeah. And we're not Dan, and so we can't translate men's research to women and expect the same outcome. Not one study in women has ever shown taking a statin medication has prevented a heart attack or a stroke in a woman. Now, there is small evidence if you've already had an event. So if you've had a heart attack or stroke, there is some evidence that a statin may help prevent a future incident. But as a part of primary prevention, the statin is not going to stop that from happening. Heart disease is insulin resistance and inflammation. Cancer is insulin resistance and inflammation. Fatty liver is insulin resistance and inflammation. Dementia is insulin resistance and inflammation. What controls those? Diet and hormones. Diet and hormones. Those are the two things that are going to improve insulin sensitivity so that you can, it's not even about, aesthetics, managing our weight for an aesthetic point of view. It is to keep us healthy so that we can grow older, not just to have more years onto life, but actually live those years. It's one thing to have longevity, but it's a whole nother to have a quality of life with that longevity.
Yeah, be able to physically be active. Because if you're stiff, you're sore, you're whatever. I mean, it's easy to sit in a chair.
We were just on a cruise. My husband and I were just on a cruise in August with our middle son and a friend of his. They get a graduation gift of a trip. And so we were on a cruise, and there was a lady in one of those automatic scooters, and she had her oxygen tanks on her back, and her husband was waiting for her medication. I was following them through the metal detector, and he had her huge Ziploc bag of prescription medications in the Ziploc bag because he had to take them out to show them to the x-ray people. And there had to have been this many bottles, if not more, within that Ziploc bag. And I'm like, I thought all I could think to myself was, good on you. You're still going on the trip, kind of a thing. But wouldn't it be awesome if you could get out of the scooter and walk and not have the oxygen and the big Ziploc bag of medications to go on the trip, And that's
how do you want to live? And people all the time, it's really hard to get up at 4:30 in the morning. It's really hard to do this. It's like, yeah, it's also really hard
to be sick.
to be sick all the time and to feel like shit and not to have any energy, to feel gross, to feel, it's like, choose your heart.
What
people.
medicine do you want to spend money on preventing the disease, or do you
Right.
want to spend money on the disease, you know?
And so that brings me to the next piece is,
Lord, you guys just saved me a whole bunch of money there. Just about dumped the whole mixer on the floor.
oh, well, we saved it.
Well done.
So the next question is, so for the average people, you know, a lot of women are in that phase of life where, you know, if you're going into your 40s, money's hard to come by. Your kids are growing up. They want expensive things. They're in sports. You're constantly giving them, the money is always allocated to somewhere
places.
other than yourself, right? You cannot put a price on your health. I mean, that's, you know, a given, but we put a price on our health, right? And so people are, you know, probably wondering, like, what does this cost me?
Right.
How can I afford this? What are avenues other than us writing a check from our bank account? Is there HSA that you can use? Is there, like, tell us how the average woman coming to you can say, I don't know how I'm going to afford this, but I need it.
Sure. We're a cash pay clinic, so we don't accept insurance. And the reason why we don't accept insurance is not to be cruel. It's because then we can't, if we accept insurance, we can't treat you the way that you deserve to be treated. Because then insurance is going to dictate the kind of labs that you're going to have drawn. They're going to dictate the kind of treatment that you are going to be able to be prescribed. You have to have an active diagnosis in order to be prescribed estrogen, progesterone, testosterone in the general medicine world of things.
What, you mean crazy isn't like a general? Okay, sorry.
Crazy, fatigue.
I think you're right though. It's like what's the cost now?
Right.
Either you're going to pay for it or someone's going to tell you what you're paying for it. You know what I mean?
It's that value. And that's what we try to, that's what we really work hard, both myself, Dr. Lovett. We have 2 providers out in Spokane, Washington. We have 1 in Alexandria, Minnesota, and we just added a gentleman, nurse practitioner out in Ohio. And so we see people via telemedicine, but we have local clinics here in Fargo and Grand Forks. We're actually expanding our clinic in Grand Forks to include primary care as well. But it's all cash pay because we get told what we can and can't give you when insurance is involved. So that's the main reason. I can't just keep going up on your progesterone through a general pharmacy because they're going to be like, why the hell are you giving her 600 milligrams of progesterone? Well, she's still bleeding through her clothes and she still feels crazy. So she needs more progesterone. But if you're giving more than 200 milligrams, they're like, wait, that's more than what's actually commercially available. You're not doing something right here. No, we're not paying for it.
Insurance companies are a whole separate podcast.
They're a whole nother podcast.
That's a whole nother
Mm-hmm.
situation and conversation with doctors versus insurance companies versus people. So that's
it's frustrating. It's very frustrating, but that's the reason why we are a cash pay clinic. And so our first line consultation, so Abby, let's say you came in for a consult. That consult is $300. It's an hour-long appointment, and we take a very comprehensive medical history from the time you were sometimes even before teen years, through your teen years, 20s, 30s, 40s, and up to your current situation. Our labs, depending men or women, because women have a few more hormones we have to draw, so the ladies' hormone panels tend to be a little more expensive. Top price of the female hormone panel is $433, but we get everything. I get your blood glucose, I get your fasting insulin, your hemoglobin A1C, kidney function, liver function, a comprehensive thyroid panel. I just don't get the TSH. I get the T4, T3, and if there's indications during the consultation, I will add on the Hashimoto's antibodies and sometimes the reverse T3 to fully evaluate your thyroid. We get your cholesterol, but we get a breakout of the LDL cholesterol particles. That's more important to understand than just your baseline LDL. We get a cortisol level. In men, we get the PSA level, the prostate-specific antigen. Women, we get the FSH, LH, estrogen, testosterone, progesterone, DHEA. In men, we get the estrogen or the estradiol testosterone DHEA in that. So men is usually 369, women is 433. If you would take that whole, by the end, I have about 6 to 7 pages of information about you that we go over in detail. If you would take that same panel to a regular hospital and say, I want all of these labs drawn, it would cost you probably a couple of $1,000s to do, because
If they would even do
if
them.
they would do it, because
Yeah.
they don't have you don't have a diagnosis to draw it. So why do I want to draw your PSA? You're not having problems urinating. You're not having problems getting an erection. So why would I draw the PSA? You're not of that age yet for screening. So I'm not going to draw it, that kind of a thing. You don't have diabetes. There's no point in drawing a fasting insulin level or hemoglobin A1C. So that's where we get around those stopping blocks, is we are a cash pay entity. We do take HSA. We do, you can use your flex savings. Sometimes those individuals will be asked by those savings accounts or to provide evidence of diagnosis for medical necessity.
Sure.
Again, you don't have a diagnosis, because the vast majority of
I'm
the
old.
time your labs come back and things are quote unquote normal according to the normal reference range. But what you have are symptoms of low T3 or thyroid. You have symptoms of low progesterone, but that's not a code that you can bill for. And so I can still write the letter, but it's not a letter of medical necessity. It's a letter of, we're treating for these symptoms. So far, in my year here, I have not had anybody have their stuff rejected. I write them the letter and it goes through. It's good enough, that kind of reason for things. So I think a lot of times they're looking to make sure that you're just not going to Walmart buying the supplements yourself and saying, I'm taking these. They want to know that there's a medical provider maybe involved.
That's
Which
fair.
makes sense.
I mean, I think there should be a medical provider involved. I mean, for sure. This is fascinating to me.
And we haven't even got into some stuff yet, so.
It's very important and we talked a little bit about this prior to Abby getting here, how important it is for a significant other or spouse to understand some of these changes, because it's kind of a little heartbreaking. I'm not going to lie. And it's probably very terrifying for those going through it, because it's like, I'm not myself anymore.
So there's a reason why most violent crimes that women commit, the most suicide attempts that happen between age 35 and 55. It correlates with the biggest change in female hormones. And so we do sometimes become different beings. I personally had a horrible perimenopausal month in April. We had a provider leave in January. I absorbed her patients. I was under a huge amount of stress on top of, just life in general. We had a senior in high school, so lots of senior things going on, lots of activities going on. So all kinds of life in general was happening. And if you've ever watched Instagram or anything on perimenopause and you see like just little things and it'll just set a woman off, those were the things that were happening to me. I got my shirt stuck on the doorknob and I wanted to rip the door off of the hinges. My husband, who I love dearly, is a mouth breather. Because he has sinus issues. And so he's been a mouth breather. I've known him for 10 years and he's a mouth breather. And we were sitting on the couch one night and it sounded like Darth Vader. And I looked at him and I was just like, I want to hate you right now. I want to throat punch you. I want to make you like breathe through your nose, dude. Come on. Yep. I didn't say anything because I knew it was my issue. It wasn't him. It was my issue. But I know that is not the norm out there. I have friends who are like, I want to throat punch my husband all the time. I don't want to see his face. My kids drive me crazy, and that makes me feel like such a bad mom because I don't want to be around my kids because they just piss me off constantly. It's not you. That's not who you are. It's your hormones making you act and behave in a way that would not be typical of you. And it is important for men to understand that don't divorce your wife just because all of a sudden she's not the same happy, jolly person. She just needs help, and she needs love and support and understanding.
And I think a lot of divorces do happen because she doesn't know what's going on. She doesn't know why she's being the way she is. She just thinks she's pissed at her husband for all these things. And then the husband is like, I don't know what to do because you're always mad at me, and I can't seem to figure out like how for you not to be mad and overstimulated. But like, you take all the things of the constant stimulation in the world that we live in, we are always stimulated. So whether it's TV, kids, noises, sports events, husbands, you know, in speaking from a woman's perspective, always being needed.
Yeah.
That sometimes like you get to this place where you're like, I'm losing my fucking mind. And you don't know where to go or what to do with it. And then the drawer thing happens. You take things out and
She's obsessed with the drawers.
and you throw shit out of your drawers and you're screaming at your family because you walked in your house and your house was not clean, and that was the catalyst that like threw you over the edge. And it's not the house. It's
not the
internal.
kids.
It's that internal chaos that is going on that you, and when people say, well, can't you control your emotions? You have no idea. You cannot. When you get into that like emotional fit of chaos, like there's no controlling it. It's exploding. It's coming out. Like there's no fixing it.
Absolutely. I woke up one morning in April and I wanted a different life. No need for a different life. I love my job. I love my husband. I love my 3 stepkids. I love our world that we have. I am truly blessed. I have a wonderful life. I have great people surrounding me, great patients, but I woke up wanting a different life. And I couldn't figure out why. And I was just the low of low that day. And I called Dr. Lovett and told her what was going on. And she's like, I'm going to order you some progesterone tritrits, which are these little meltable progesterone things that you just let dissolve in your mouth, and it improves your mood or helps you feel better. Got them, started using them, and, you know, I would start to feel anxious or just hateful, or why can't this person just drive right for Pete's sake? You know, I have to drive all the way from north down here to the south side of town. Why are these idiots on the road every morning when I'm trying to get to the office, you know, kind of a thing. Take the progesterone tritrit and you're just like,
Like better.
nice.
I will take a pallet of those.
Yes.
It's almost
Yes.
like, you know, it's like a husband blow dart. You can like, so like when you're hungry, he throws a granola bar at me.
Yeah.
These would be like the like mood ones.
Yep.
I'm going to order some. I will tell you this. There's a couple things I stopped doing, and I haven't taken a breath because I don't dare breathe out of my mouth. First of all, no, I'm kidding. This is amazing to know.
And men need to understand that, because another thing that happens in our 40s is your testosterone level. A lot of people don't realize that testosterone for us women is our most dominant hormone in our body. We always think of it as estradiol. We always think of it as maybe progesterone, but it's testosterone is our most dominant hormone in our body, especially in our 20s. So inhibin goes, progesterone goes, testosterone goes, all during that perimenopausal phase of life. So now she's a crabby bitch. She doesn't want to have sex anymore. She thinks you're ugly. She's gaining weight. She doesn't know what the hell is going on. She hates her life. She just wants you to pick up the house, you know, and maybe I'll have sex with you tonight. But he's like, you used to think that was great. You used to think that was cute, all of this stuff. And now you just hate me. And now we get a divorce because we feel like we're two separate people. But if we can keep that intimacy, and if both people understand maybe what's going on, like you alluded to, you have a lot of extensive history with people with PTSD, and work with people with PTSD. And I think that's kind of a similar beast. You're a different person from the event that you experienced. I have an ex-husband that experienced significant PTSD, so I understand what that's like. He was not the same person after his events, you know, that kind of thing. And it's the same. I think there's not direct correlation, but I think it's parallel.
There's
similarities. You
There are
have to understand what that other person is going through, and you have to be supportive. And, you know, sometimes that means counseling. Sometimes that means that maybe you both go and have your hormones checked. Maybe that's something that you guys work on your diet together, or start exercising together, kind of thing, to build a different bond together, so that you have this shared thing that you're going through,
Granted, we're not saying that it's okay to like abuse your spouse.
No, not at all.
Like that's not an excuse
It's
to
not
like
an excuse,
be
no.
evil to them. Like we're just explaining like how they're feeling. Like, and a lot of women don't have the outbursts. You would never know. They keep it hidden inside,
Yes.
and they're really good at it.
They're festering.
And they're like, they're dying inside because they just don't know what's going on, but they're quiet about it.
I think it's good for women and spouses or significant others to realize they're not alone.
Absolutely.
This is very much.
This is happening in every household of a
absolutely.
married man and a woman, or a dating man and a woman, or it's happening in every household, probably from mid-30s until the mid-50s. Every household it's happening in. Nobody is exempt.
And I think too, like in marriages, why there's so much infidelity, the search for the happiness.
Yeah.
You're looking in the wrong place instead of looking inside yourself and saying, hey, there's something not right within me. They're thinking that the grass is greener on the other side, and they destroy their marriage. And then it's too late to go back.
Right. And I've had a number of women, mention we get them optimized on their testosterone. Yep, their libido is better, but maybe it's better. There's more desire for sex, but the interest in sex is still low, and then that's when you have to really look into why. Is there underlying marital issues? Is there something else? And that's where counseling comes into play, because you can't just fix somebody by giving them some testosterone. If there's emotional needs not being met, if there's other things not quite right, if there is trauma that maybe has been experienced at some point in time in the marriage, that needs to be addressed too.
I'd like to take that correlation a step further. Because for a long time, and I'm not anti-treatment at all. I'm more of a robust treatment, and I know some places where individuals with PTSD, they're medicated. I mean, they have pills like that, and all it's doing is covering the symptoms. It has not treated the root cause, and that's kind of what you were talking about with. Yep. All of this as well. You have to treat the problem. You can't just cover it up, because when you stop taking that, guess what happens?
Right. Well, men go through andropause. Women experience perimenopause and menopause. Men go through andropause. Your testes don't make the same amount of testosterone that you made when you were in your 20s. And so men start to develop the beer belly and gain weight and get the man boobs, and they can't sleep, and they're depressed, and they don't want to be active and that kind of thing. And it's because they're lacking testosterone. Now, again, what was the chicken before the egg? Is the insulin resistance the precipitating factor to the low testosterone, or was the low testosterone the cause of the insulin resistance? My bet is, knowing today's diet and culture, that it's probably the insulin resistance that is causing some of the low testosterone. Because we have gentlemen that come to us age 35 looking to lose weight. Unless they're done having their family, we don't treat with testosterone, because testosterone will cause permanent infertility in men. So we will only treat unless they are done with their family. They're no longer interested in having any more children with their current relationship or any potential future relationships. If they've had maybe a vasectomy, that's not a requirement. You don't have to have a vasectomy in order to have testosterone, but you are done. You are hard set done with kids. Then we will prescribe the testosterone to men. But younger and younger men are coming to us, and their testosterone levels look like somebody who's 60, all because of the diet that they're taking in. And you alluded to the endocrine disrupting chemicals that we're exposed to. I think there's this statistic out there that we consume a credit card size amount of plastic each month or something like that, just from all of our foods and things that are covered in plastic and the aerolized plastics in the air, we're inhaling them. And so there's so many things, pesticides and chemicals and, food. It's good for you food, but it was probably grown in a crop with a pesticide on it. And so
I see a direct correlation too, like when, my husband and my family eats better, when they're, not eating as much junk food or as much sugar or things like that, the mood is better.
Yep.
We bicker less. We don't have the spats that we do as when, we're not eating well, we're tired, and I mean, there's other correlations too. Maybe we're busier. That's why we're eating like crap, or, there's more stimulation factors. Nothing is just a straight line,
Right.
of course.
Yep.
But I do notice that in a way. And, like, especially with, when it's sunnier days and we're outside, like it's a better mood as opposed to, like that's a correlation to the vitamin D. For me, the vitamin B, the stress thing, if I ran out of my B complex a week ago and I can tell that
We're going to get you some.
yeah,
I got some out in the cupboard. I can get you some
maybe
today.
I'll buy some from you before I leave here today.
You have it so you can inject it like directly?
Actually, I do.
have
I
that,
take
yeah.
the vitamin B shot. Yeah.
Yeah, you can do a vitamin B
Do it
shot. We
right
do
on
offer
her-
injectables.
Highly recommend
Yeah.
those, by the way. And actually, instead of carb loading, that is what I did before I did the triathlon. Is I got a vitamin B shot, and my energy was great. I always get kind of a slight headache the next day, but then like after that, then I'm like, woo, like like you just get that good.
And you got the high anyway because you accomplished something that you worked so hard for as well. So
it was
yeah.
very very exciting.
Good for you.
The
I know
exercise.
the weather wasn't great during that whole.
It was very cold,
Yes.
and the wind was not forgiving
Right.
throughout it. But I loved it, and I did it, and I was excited, and
Now you're going to do the full one.
I'm going to do the Olympic this coming year, and then well, don't quote me on this. Well, maybe, I don't know. I'm flirting with the idea of an Ironman within a couple years, but so I'm working my way towards it. But an Olympic is first, because when I started the sprint triathlon, 1 mile was hard,
Yep.
and now 10 miles is hard running.
Right,
So like
right.
it choose your hard. So
Yep,
I'm
yep.
working towards the next hard.
And swimming in a pool is different than swimming in open water,
Yes.
and that makes it a huge. My husband could tell you that one,
It is, and I'm a terrible swimmer. So like, I mean, I'm an okay swimmer, but I'm slow as snot, because I'm always sighting, and
Right.
I'm not proficient at it yet. And in order for me to do an Olympic, I have to get better at my skill building and things like that. But like, I'm always interested in how to optimize myself, because you are a machine, and how you fuel your machine is how your day is going to go. If you want to eat 2 pieces of buttered toast in the morning, you're going to fuel yourself in a particular way of, like you said, your sugar spike. You're going to be tired right away. You're going to be hungry before lunch. You're going to probably eat some junk food. You're going to go find the quickest fast food meal. So now you're fueling that glycemic piece again. And then you go home and, you stop and you're like, oh, well, it's a late night, so I'm going to go pick up Papa Murphy's. Well, what did you fuel yourself with that day? Junk. You're going to feel like crap.
There's no nutrient value to it. You feel full, but there's no nutrient value to any of that. That those cells can then create the energy reactions that it's looking for. Magnesium, B12, vitamin D. What else do we typically prescribe people? Selenium, zinc. Those things are important to be supportive of our hormones, in particular of the thyroid. Our thyroid, that's a whole nother podcast in of itself, how much the thyroid can do for people too. And we optimize the thyroid. We don't go by a TSH. TSH is bullshit. All it is, an evaluation of how hard your brain is working to stimulate your thyroid. That's it. It doesn't tell me if your thyroid is actually making adequate hormone or if that hormone is being taken up at the cellular level. And so today's guidelines for thyroid and thyroid replacement and that kind of thing need a complete overhaul, like most things do when it comes to guidelines and practice in that regard. So again, we treat based off of symptoms for the thyroid, not for hypo or hyperthyroidism, that kind of thing. So.
Sure. And I also see too, like with kids, how we fuel our children. Like we'll give them, the mac and cheese, the hot dogs, the the other things like that, the quick granola bars and those sorts of things.
And they're crabby and they're tired and
and
they don't
the
pay attention.
ADHD, all of the things that are correlated with that, and you can definitely see, like I said, the difference in behavior and how what they eat and what they put in them.
Yep. Yep. It's anything out there right now, with Robert Kennedy, and I know there's a lot of hot topic things with vaccines and getting the chemicals out of our food and that kind of stuff. He's not wrong about a lot of this stuff. It's not wrong, and it's the American public are going to have to step up and ask for improvement of things, because big industry cares nothing about us getting better or eating better or anything of that, because if people are healthy, they don't make money. And so that's sometimes a hard reality that we have to face, that big industry does not care about you. And so if you want to feel better, you have to stand up and ask for better. So, when it comes to hormone replacement, a common question that I get and Dr. Lovett gets when we're on podcasts or speaking in public is, how do I talk to my doctor about this? And we're like, well, tell them your symptoms and say, take the information that you've learned, the podcasts that you've heard, the study that you saw on Instagram from Dr. Mary Claire Havers or Dr. Kelly Casperson or something like that. Those are two ladies, obviously very well known in the hormone world right now. I don't always necessarily agree with everything that they do, but they're getting the awareness factor out there, and they're on the path to making a change, as we are too. And that's where Dr. Love and I are starting our own podcast. We want to start doing more, taking a study and presenting on why this is more specific compared to what you might find otherwise and that kind of thing, educating yourself, but taking that stuff to your doctor and saying, well, this doctor says this, and this provider says this, and this study says this, and my sister started it in Minneapolis and she feels amazing. I want that too. And if they're like, well, I don't know anything about that, I can't help you, then find a different doctor.
Right.
Find somebody that's going to help you. I guess the biggest pieces of advice that I have is make sure they don't prescribe you topical progesterone. Make sure that we aren't pellet users here. We don't use pellets for testosterone or estradiol replacement. And I don't know how much longer you guys want to keep on going. We can keep on going. If you even want to break this podcast up into different segments or whatever.
I think that's brilliant, actually, because there's going to be a ton of questions.
Yeah,
We don't use pellets. Yeah, we don't use pellets I'd be happy to get together with you and go over more from questions that you get. We don't use pellets because they're not controlled. Once they're put in, they're put in. And so if the dose is too high, you're going to have side effects for 3 to 4 months until your body absorbs those pellets and the effects have worn off. We use a transdermal testosterone cream, or you can do an IM injection of testosterone. Men can use the cream, they can use the IM injections. Women, we can do the IM injections, the cream, and women have the option of an oral capsule as well. But if you're wanting an improvement in your libido, the topical cream is the route to go, and it's controlled, and you're giving it to yourself every day so that you're not having these peaks and valleys. The problem with injectables or pellets, they're put in, your levels are super high, and then they come down gradually over a period of time. You put them back in or you inject again, super high. So you're always on this roller coaster. You're not on like this good steady state, and that's where the testosterone is on a more controlled level. So yes, making sure that you're on an oral progesterone. There's a big, if you follow Instagram and if you do follow Mary Claire Havers, Kelly Casperson, or a number of other OBGYNs that I follow out there, all of them talk about topical estradiol, either vaginal estradiol or patch form estradiol. And they do improve symptoms. They do help out with mood. They do help out with hot flashes. They do help out with joint pain and inflammation and that kind of thing. But all of them don't support cardiovascular health. So the number one killer in America is heart disease. We're an industrialized country. How have we not figured out heart disease in women? Because it's a lack of estradiol. In men and in women, estradiol are what keep your pipes clean. When you take it in through oral form, it has to go through a third pass effect through the liver. And when the liver metabolizes it, it creates metabolites. And those metabolites are then what erode and eat the plaque in the blood vessels or protect us from plaque in the blood vessels over a period of time. No statin medication will ever do that for you. It just solidifies it or keeps the level of inflammation down. It doesn't erode it. Estradiol over time will erode it. So men, you never want to take an estradiol blocker. There's a lot of school of thought out there that if you want bigger benefits from your testosterone, you need to block your estradiol. You do that, you're going to end up with erectile dysfunction. You're going to start putting on body weight and body fat, and you're going to feel like shit. Don't block your estradiol. You were given that hormone for a reason, and it protects you against prostate cancer and cardiovascular disease. So you want to keep the estradiol. Women, if you give you back, we don't do estradiol until you're postmenopausal, because if we gave it to you in perimenopause, you would end up with the 5 Bs: bitchiness, bloating, breast tenderness, bleeding, and blemishes. And so we only give estradiol once you are postmenopausal, because you are still making estradiol in your perimenopausal phase of life. There's some moments where it's really, really low and you can experience symptoms of low estrogen. But I've done it. I had a lady who I thought she was postmenopausal based off of her labs, based off of her symptoms, gave her estradiol, and she just started to bleed, and she was emotional, and she couldn't figure out why this was happening. We repeated some labs. Sure enough, she really wasn't perimenopausal. She wasn't menopausal. She was still in that perimenopausal phase of life. She just went through a long period of time without a period. But yet she wasn't quite yet menopausal, and she reacted to estradiol in not a favorable way. So
we could go for a million years. And I want to tell you, like, thank you so much for doing this for us. And I definitely think we should schedule a follow-up and talk about some
all the
of
questions that people have.
other things that are definitely going to come up from men and for women. I mean, I could ask 4,000 questions, over the course of time. But, we definitely say, like, if people do have questions, or any women listening to this and they want to just have a consultation with you, where can they find you?
We are here. I'm here in Fargo at the Fargo office. We're down on 52nd Avenue. We do see people via telemedicine. So if you're listening to this podcast not in the state of North Dakota, we are licensed, I think, across somewhere between 12 to 17 other states. All of us carry different licenses across other states as well, so we can see people through telemedicine. But locally, I'm here in the Fargo office. Dr. Lovett is located in our Grand Forks office. Carrie Anderson is a PA in Alexandria area. Michael Furchi is out in Ohio, and he sees a lot of males, but he will see females as well as long as you feel comfortable talking about things with a man. And then we have a nurse practitioner, Jen Carlson, in Spokane, Washington, and Dr. Christian Enghausen out in Spokane, Washington as well. So we are spread out. We can find you a provider that works for you and for your area. You can look us up on our website, fireflymedical.net. You can always call the office. Our phone number is 701-757-1440, and speak to our 2 receptionists, Sam or Gabby, and they can get you on the calendar for a consultation if you want, or if you just have more questions about our services that we offer, and that component. But yes, a consultation is usually required first. After that consultation, we do a full panel lab draw. We meet again for another full hour and review those labs, and then talk about treatment options. Treatment is never an obligation. You can have your labs done, have the consult done. If we go over the results, I can tell you what I feel you should maybe go forward with, but you're under no obligation to embark on that treatment journey if that's not something that you feel is right for you. Because again, we want you to do what's best for you. So
absolutely. Interesting fact. I walked in the parking lot first, beat you here. Wearing my old guard unit shirt.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yep.
And want to thank your husband for his service.
Thank you. Thank you. And for you as well. Yeah, we had family day yesterday at drill. So yeah.
Nice.
He's a lieutenant colonel in the Air Force. So
call sign.
doesn't have one.
Oh, well, let's give him one.
Yeah, he's one of the rare ones that doesn't have a call sign. Oh. Yeah. Mm-hmm. He's one of the pilots out there. So.
Oh, very
awesome.
cool.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Well, thank you so much.
Thank you for asking me, Abby.
If anybody has questions or they want to, reach us on this, you can go to our Facebook, which is Kiss My Chaos on Facebook. You're welcome to PM us there if you have any particular questions.
Did you say PMS?
Kind of.
PM.
We're past that now. We're pairing now.
Oh, yeah. Gotcha.
We're
I'm so confused right now.
Yeah. we're going through, I saw something on Instagram the other day that we're in like cougar puberty or something.
Cougar puberty.
Cougar puberty.
Yeah, cougar puberty now. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a real thing. Like, and whoever said that first, like, I hope you're making millions because that has never been more of a true statement.
Right.
For sure. I used it. I actually stole it the other day. I told Andrew it was mine. I lied, honey. I saw it on TikTok.
Keep an open mind when you listen to this podcast. A lot of times hormones are met with criticism or the way that Dr. Lovett and I and our practitioners here practice comes under scrutiny a lot of time because of that horrible study done in the early 2000s, the Women's Health Initiative. And you have to remember that study was done with synthetic hormones and not with bioidentical hormones, and it doesn't correlate. And so come into hormones with an open mind, and we're happy to help you ask the questions. We always welcome questions, because if you can't question something, then we're just in a dictatorship, right? So, yeah.
Exactly. That was the whole reasoning behind the podcast, because, I think in my start of all of this, I was really quick to grab my pitchfork, and I think in a society, we all think that, we're all of our own internet warriors. And like, even in my own profession, like we talked about, people come in with a predispositioned idea of like, well, I read this or I read that. It's like, well, who wrote the article? Right. Or where are you finding it?
Where was it funded?
When was it funded? Who funded it? So
And
there's
why?
just so much misinformation out there. And we're not saying, that she's the end all be all.
No.
We're saying do what is best for you, but utilize all of the information you have in front of you.
Right. Yeah. It like you said, I'm not the the leading expert on this, but I do have more information than most, practitioners out there. Yeah. Yes. That kind of thing. I'm sure there's somebody way more smarter out there than me that knows a whole hell of a lot more than I do. And someday, I do think I've met her. Her name is Dr. Nichole Lovett, but she is a genius. And perhaps maybe the next time we meet, we could she could come down.
I would love to have
be
her on there too
with us, because she is just her brain is a marvel.
But you're also a walking testament to this. You live this.
I live this. I live it every day. I eat this way. I do hormones this way. When women tell me the way they feel, I'm like, yeah, I get it. I've been there. I've felt that. I've gone through marriage concerns. This is my second marriage. That kind of thing. I've gone through heartbreak with kids. I am just like any other lady out there. So.
And that's the best way to explain it is you've lived it. It's experience. And that's what we talk about, this trauma to triumph, because it really is. You had your trauma and you decided to take it in your own hands, which is amazing. Yep. Well, thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you, Holly, for hooking us up.
Yeah, absolutely. This is amazing. And I'm so glad that you agreed to do this. So till next time, everybody, we want to thank you for listening and for being with us today.
Thank you, too, for not killing me.
You're welcome.
Well, you don't have anything for us to kill. Angie maybe might disagree, but
maybe. Thank you so much. You've been listening to the Kiss My Chaos podcast. Stay tuned for our next episode, where we speak with some of the most intriguing people about their journey from trauma to triumph. If you find yourself in mental crisis, please seek professional medical help immediately.